Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Michael Hoffman, and I'm the president of Government CIO Media and Research. Government CIO Media and Research is the online destination of thought leadership and research focused on the transformation of government IT. Our experienced team collects the best practices and research regarding the advancing technology and management landscape. I want to thank everyone who has tuned in this afternoon to our virtual event, The Future of Work, Workforce Reengagement. We have an excellent line of speakers, and we're looking forward to hearing how government agencies will harness the power and potential of technology to navigate the challenge to re-engage their workforces. The coronavirus and resulting quarantine has drastically changed the workday for many people out there. So many more are working from home. The day-to-day for many has changed, and many expect some of these changes to be long-lasting, while others will see their jobs go back to normal in some ways. What we wanted to do today is invite some of the top government and industry executives to discuss how these changes will impact government agencies and what digital tools and strategies are being used to make work safe and also make workers efficient. We'll start with a panel discussion with the Chief Talent Management Officer from the Department of Veterans Affairs and ServiceNow's Principal Digital Strategist. That'll be followed by our CIO Spotlight with the CIOs from the Health, Resources and Services Administration and U.S. Patent and Trademark Office. But before we kick off our program, I'd like to thank today's sponsor, ServiceNow, for underwriting this event and making these important conversations possible today. Without our sponsors, we wouldn't be able to bring our audience valuable content like this afternoon's virtual event. I want to remind audience members that you can submit questions for our speakers in the comment box you see below the video player on your screen, and we will choose some to ask during the conversations this morning. I also want to encourage everyone to participate in the conversation on social media by using the hashtag #DigitalCIO. So without further ado, I'd like to welcome our first panel to the virtual stage. And I'm going to hand it off to Government CIO's Managing Editor, Amy Kluber. Amy, take it away.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining. Thanks, Mike. As he mentioned, lots of people are working remotely right now. It's why we're virtually conducting this event now. Those who have never worked remotely, they were faced with the necessity to stay socially isolated, which has brought a number of issues across a couple of areas. One, of course, the actual technology support and capabilities to enable such a change in working. And two was the impact on the workforce, which we are profiling now with these speakers. We've heard about a few of advancements nationwide, both in public and private, and agencies have learned how to deal with it during this time. So I would like to open it up to our panelists, Jonathan Albaum and Jim Trinken. First, I'll have each of you introduce who you are, what you do at your organizations, and some of your priorities. So we can start with Jim first.
Well, thank you, Amy. My name is Jim Trinken. I'm the Chief Talent Management Officer for the Office of Information and Technology at the Department of Veterans Affairs. And our IT department is pretty large, got about 8,000 government employees and about 8,000 contractors. And we service the VA workforce, which is employees and contractors of about 500,000. So we're the second largest government agency. So it certainly is very, very big. And the challenges that we faced going into the COVID pandemic were numerous. Having to switch to a lot of telehealth and televideo kind of responses in our medical centers, and able to do that and enhance telework for all of our employees. Really gave us quite a few challenges, but we met those really well. And I'll save the rest for any questions that you might have.
We'll definitely get back into those in a few minutes, but Jonathan, do you want to introduce yourself first?
Sure. So I'm Jonathan Albaum, and I'm the Principal Digital Strategist at ServiceNow. I've been at ServiceNow for about a year. Prior to joining ServiceNow and working in enterprise software, I spent more than a decade in the federal government in various CIO positions and different IT executive positions. So when I look at the current situation and I think about the challenges that I encountered as a government CIO, I recognize some similarities, but again, this is a situation that's unlike anything that we've encountered before. But I think when you look at the challenges we've had to overcome, and you think about how we've adjusted the way we work, There's so many good stories inside of that based on the IT modernization, digital transformation activities we've been undertaking in government for the past several years. So I think it's exciting to reflect on these things as the environments have stabilized a little bit, and we see agencies being very productive, continuing to excel on their missions.
Right. So, Jim, I'll start with you. What are some areas of impacts that you have noticed at VA that you are immediately tackling as far as how the pandemic has played out so far?
Well, obviously, nearly overnight, we had to really transition in our medical centers from, an in-person kind of visits with our veterans to mostly a telehealth, televideo kind of experiences. And we were able to do that quite readily. We added in a whole bunch of different servers and a lot of different capability for telehealth and being able to connect with veterans from wherever the clinician was. Sometimes they were in the medical center, sometimes they were at home. So we were able to do that quite well. And then we had to enable all of our workforce to be able to telework. So we had something like 50% more telework. So a lot of folks didn't even have equipment to do that. So we had to order 225,000 laptops and 100,000 iPhones to be able to get that. And we've got in more than half of those now and setting all those up for use. We had to increase our bandwidth for all of the telehealth. So we had to, quadruple our bandwidth in our 4 areas that we have that so that we could have VPN access for everyone and Citrix access gateways for those that didn't have their government laptops or something like that. They could use their home laptops and just use the software from VA on there. So those are the main things. And we wanted to keep in touch with our employees as well. So we have studios that I run in the organization, and some of the employees had the foresight to bring the control panel for the studio home. And with that control panel at home, they were able to operate the studio remotely. So they didn't even have to go into the office. We operated the studio remotely, and we started a weekly employee engagement connection call with our CIO and all the senior leaders on every week. And we got on an average of about 4,000 people on every week on those calls. We've done 15 of those to date just to kind of keep everybody up to speed. And it really, really mattered. During this time, the last 6 months, our employee engagement, by the way, we kept measuring employee engagement and customer satisfaction during the pandemic when some others didn't. Our employee engagement went up 9 percentage points. And our customer satisfaction went up 8 percentage points. That's just amazing, because we're keeping connected with everyone. And that was our main focus.
Thanks, Jim. And Jonathan, now that agencies are exploring how they're going to be returning to the office under new operations, there's different ways that they're strategizing how to do that, whether, some workforce members stay home, some come to the office, there's social distancing to take into consideration. And with that, there's changing technologies that have come with it. So as agencies are moving back into the office, how are you seeing government weighing the digital tools that are necessary to make the new normal happen?
Amy, I think that's a really great question. What Jim was describing, I think, was very typical of a lot of agencies. They had to do a lot of hard work to get everybody successful at home. However, returning into a workspace is, I think, infinitely more complicated during this time where we still have the risk of the pandemic. It was easy to send people home. It's hard to bring them back. It doesn't seem like it should be hard, but the devil's in the details. From the idea of understanding our employees ready to return and understanding sentiment. And I appreciate Jim's comments about the VA continuing to survey employees and understanding how they're feeling about the current situation, because you need a workforce to be ready to do their best, and you can't if you're worried about getting sick or childcare or some other things. So there's, I think, that aspect of it. We really need to understand what employees think about returning to the office. But from a more practical perspective, how do you do appropriate health surveys, whether that is a temperature check, if that's appropriate, or asking employees if they've been exposed to anybody with coronavirus, or other risk factors. And then, from a physical perspective inside the office, how do you create workspaces that are safe for physical distancing? I worked in a lot of open spaces. I worked in offices with very tightly packed cubes. And, those environments do not necessarily set themselves up for successful physical distancing. So how do you either move employees to a shift mentality where I'll come in on Monday and you'll come in on Tuesday, so we have fewer people in the office? And then how do you manage all of the PPE that's necessary, that personal protective equipment, whether it's gloves or it's masks or it's cleaning supplies, hand sanitizer, whatever? It's many agencies have committed and different organizations have committed to having these things on site for their employees. Well, you need to be able to manage those stockpiles across offices or locations, across geographies. And then, what happens if you run out? What happens if you don't have proper cleaning supplies? You have to send everybody home. That can become very disruptive. So all of those little questions, are independently, they don't seem that challenging, but added together, it creates a lot of complexity. And I really believe agencies are relying on technology to help solve some of those problems, to make those workflows simpler and bring people back into the office safely. We're seeing some employees go back. We're seeing still a lot telework at home. And I think the government's taking an appropriately cautious approach to bringing federal employees back. We'll do it as needed where we need to.
Jim, back to you. You mentioned your employee engagement scores have increased. These are in reference to some surveys that your office puts together and organizes and deploys across VA. How can you go into those surveys and what are they measuring and how are you using them to inform some of OIT's strategies?
So we in the Office of Information and Technology, or OIT as you call it, we really do a lot of survey efforts. We probably lead all of VA in all of our survey efforts. We do quarterly employee engagement surveys, whereas VA only does once annually, and they delayed that one until after the pandemic. We continue to do our quarterly employee engagement. We do monthly customer satisfaction surveys where we sample 1/12 of the VA population, and we do it in a way that there's the technical experts that figured out how to do this. We do it in a way that no one person in VA gets more than one survey a year. So there's no survey fatigue, that kind of a thing. And so we've been able to keep that up and keep that pace up. And it really, really does help us to try to improve how we're dealing with our employees, how we're collaborating with our customers, how we're focusing on veteran outcomes and improving the veteran experience. And that's, that we design our surveys in a way that we can not just survey what people, their responses are, but we do it in a way that we can figure out what drives high scores. And that's the important thing. What are the drivers of high scores? So we do more of that to leverage our strengths and really do what's working and not figure out what's not working. We don't work on the lowest scores. We work on what drives high scores. And that really does help out. And I'm a statistician, so I could probably put everybody's eyes to sleep with talk about that. But suffice it to say, our surveys really do great things for us because they really show us how we should operate to improve all of the things that we're trying to improve in our strategy.
What are some of the themes that you've taken away from some of the surveys done recently, maybe before and during the pandemic?
Well, so for example, our customer surveys, we do the standard surveys, what's called the American Customer Satisfaction Index, or ACSI. It's kind of an industry-wide standard across the U.S. And we put ourselves into an affinity group of 28 different companies. And our ACSI recent score was 78. That puts us on a par in our affinity group with Microsoft at 77. Google has 79. The highest in our affinity group is Charles Schwab with 81. So we're in the top 3 or 4, which really has helped out because we were down in the low 70s and have moved up into that area, all because of the things that we work on. We always survey our customers in 4 areas. So we figure out that there's 4 areas of the customer's experience that we want to evaluate. There's 4 dimensions, and the dimension is when you worked with our IT organization today, was this interaction effective? Was it easy? How did you feel, or were you satisfied? And do you trust IT? So those 4 areas, and all 4 of those areas, the dimensions of our customer experience have gone up considerably over time here in the last 4 or 5 months, and that's really been very good for us. So those are the kind of areas we do. We have a lot of written comments that we take, and we organize all the written comments, and that really gives us great information on specifics to try to improve our interaction with our customers and how we collaborate with them. What we found, though, the biggest driver of customer satisfaction for us in IT and VA is how we collaborate with our customers. So it's that collaboration that happens in the close environment with our IT folks in the field, as they're in the medical centers, they're in the regional offices, they're close to the cemeteries, they really interact with our customers well. It's the business partner collaborations that we have at senior leadership. When we try to work out what their outcomes are trying to do and help them with the technology aspects of reaching their outcomes. And then on our help desk, and it's how our help desk people are able to collaborate with their customers on the phone. It's all about customer collaboration to improve their outcomes, and we focus on them. And that's the specifics more than the specifics of the survey. I'll just do it that way.
Okay. Jonathan, do you have anything to add as far as the overall theme of collaboration?
Absolutely. The story Jim tells is a great one. And to the extent that we're able to utilize the pandemic and the challenges of working from home to double down on the need for collaboration, on the need for eliminating the unstructured collaboration that normally occurs in an office setting. And unstructured, by that I mean the work gets done because I know who to call, or I can send an email to somebody who will do something for me. As Jim is describing, I think they're using lots of automated tools and digital technologies to drive better collaboration generally. And in a time where the unstructured collaboration doesn't work as well, when we're at home and we have the complexities of families and distractions at home, we have the ability to rely on technology to help us be more effective and work more closely together. We keep describing this as social distancing, and I think a better term is physical distancing, because I think socially we're closer together than we ever have been in some ways. We're routinely on Zooms talking to my colleagues, talking to customers, talking to other teams. And it sounds like Jim is facilitating a very similar environment at the VA in the use of digital tools to do that, of tools that can integrate data, that can share data, that can be connecting different constituencies, customers or citizens or different stakeholders to an agency's mission, is really important during this time. There's just not a lot of natural anxiety in this kind of environment, and the knowledge that the people that you need are just a click away, I think is reassuring to a lot of people inside and outside of the government. So it sounds like they're doing quite well, and I'm really impressed by that.
And Amy, I'd like to add something, if I could, to that, to those comments by Jonathan, because collaborating with our business partners was not something that really government agencies look towards. Our customers, I guess, previously kind of considered their IT department as order takers. Some vendor would come them and brief them on some shiny new toy, and they'd come to us and give us the shiny new toy, and those kind of things. We really had to work hard at this customer collaboration, but when we can do that now that we've been doing so much customer collaboration, they recognize us as the IT experts. So they say, here's what we're trying to achieve. Here's the outcome that we seek. How can you help us? And that's probably the biggest difference.
Yeah, Amy, if I just can note what Jim's saying, I think is true at the VA and other organizations, and I think more broadly across the federal IT community, there's a recognition that the information technology is not a commodity. It is strategic, and we need to treat it as a strategic tool drive agency missions, not something that you can just quickly acquire when you need it. Now, granted, the VA went out and they bought laptops and they bought software and they bought capabilities to support remote work, but they couldn't have done that if they hadn't been investing in technology over the years. They were able to add in a quick way. But if you're not going to think about IT as a strategic asset, if you're going to stay in the mindset that I can just order a laptop when I need it and I'm going to have it, it doesn't apply to harder concepts like collaboration, like integrating systems, like digital transformation. Those are really hard topics that it's just so evident how important they are to keep agencies running now, to keep the mission work going, to keep the work flowing. So, I think we're seeing a recognition of where IT organizations, where CIOs, where people like Jim, where they sit in the agency, that position's raising up. And it's more about, really having a voice in the conversation as agencies plan budgets, plan how they deliver on their mission. If there's anything that good comes out of this, is a real recognition that these roles are not to be discounted or given second thought. They need to be right at the table with agency decision makers.
And Jonathan, you are, as the industry representative on this panel, you kind of have a bit of a unique position considering you were in government. Considering that different agencies have considerations like different missions, security, how are you seeing other agencies responding and bringing their workforce back to the office as far as, who's able and whose IT posture is more equipped or not equipped to be able to handle that? How are you seeing that?
Well, I think agencies that have invested in IT modernization, digital transformation activities are better positioned today to bring people back. What I'm also seeing is that all of the investments that agencies made, like Jim was describing, different hardware, software, to create remote work flexibilities, all those new assets, those need to be managed. All of the innovations around mission delivery, telehealth, in the case of the VA, perhaps, those capabilities need to be brought into the larger fold and operationalized so they will be there when the next crisis hits, and that they can be stable so they can scale and they can grow as the agency mission evolves. So those are activities that agencies are focused on right now, really creating a state of readiness for their workforce, whether it's in a physical office or at home or likely in some hybrid mix. You really need to rely on the technology, the innovation over the past 3-4 months really being stabilized. And I think as we do that and we continue to invest in digital transformation, we'll be creating this very resilient, very digital organization, digital government, and we'll be creating an environment where we can meet citizens where they are in a digital space. And, again, if there's something that good comes out of this, I think it's those investments and that mindset change that I think we're all experiencing.
Now, Jim, VA has pivoted to supporting the national healthcare infrastructure. Compared to other agencies, it has that unique fourth mission. So how have you seen operations for you adapting while the agency at large has had to kind of change how it's operating to support that mission?
Right. So, on the people side of it, which is where I'm coming from, I'm in charge of all people issues. We saw a tremendous influx of new clinicians coming in very quickly into our Veteran Health Administration and into our medical centers and wherever. I think we're something like 25 to 30,000 have come in the last several months. So we had to ramp up our hiring in order to meet that need as well. So we prioritized to temporarily hire 900 IT workers, and we were able to really quickly announce those on open and continuous announcements on USA Jobs. We utilized our direct hire authority. We did a lot of resume mining, which is probably not what usual federal agencies do. We resume mined on USA Jobs. All you have to do is ask USA Jobs, and they'll let you do some resume mining. We do resume mining on LinkedIn. It's a very inexpensive charge in order to do resume mining on LinkedIn. And we were able to find these sort of passive job applicants and get them on board very quickly. We also asked our workforce to volunteer if they had some IT skills, could they help out on a detail in these medical centers that really needed to ramp up their response quickly. So we got dozens and dozens of employees that volunteered to come in on details and do that. We re-employed some of our folks who had retired, and we were able to get them a dual compensation waiver so that they would get their full retirement pay and their full salary while they were working for us. So we were able to take advantage of all those flexibilities, and we've currently have about a third of our those 900 hires already on board and working in our operations, and that's really helping us out. We sort of had to ramp up the hiring. As you know, it's quicker to bring in a clinician, quite frankly, than it is to bring in a 2210 IT specialist, because they're in different titles. Title 5 for the IT specialist, Title 38 for the clinicians. For a clinician, you're either a doctor or you're either a nurse or you're not. And when you are and you have the certification, we can hire you very quickly. But IT, you have to go through the resume and make certain, just somebody has to look at that and say, okay, you have the skills and experience necessary to be a IT specialist, and that takes some time. But but we are well under our 60-day goal for bringing people in. We brought in people as quickly as 2 weeks. So that's really what we're doing is sort of on the people side to help things going.
Now, that brings up a good point as far as onboarding and offboarding during this time. People have had to do that without ever having to do it remotely before. It's inevitable. How can teams maintain efficiency and collaboration for some of these workforce processes as they are thinking about operating under new circumstances? Jonathan, do you have any insight?
Well, sure. Onboarding, offboarding, these are processes that organizations don't always completely understand. They happen inside organizations, but oftentimes in that sort of unstructured way. Again, I applaud, the comments from Jim, because it seems like they're taking a really nice approach to understanding how to offboard, how to onboard employees so they can do it under any circumstances, whether in an office or they're remotely. But, it's just the sort of a classic example of a workflow that too often is not managed. It touches on different systems. It touches on different organizations. I think the real opportunity is for any organization to, understand the work that they're doing, think about whether or not there's a better way to do it, and then define digital workflows that support the best way to bring employees on board, whether it's during a pandemic or not. What's the best way to offboard employees and contractors, for that matter, as they come on? It can be, unfortunately, very difficult to make sure that people come in and out of the organization in a way that's well managed and supports good security. When somebody leaves, you need to reclaim their badge, you need to reclaim their computer, you need to make sure they don't have any data or other agency assets that they shouldn't have. And how do you know that all that's happening? Again, when you can automate a workflow that way, when you can create digital workflows that support onboarding and offboarding, I think you're also reducing the risk in your organization.
Thanks, Jonathan and Jim. We are actually out of time. That went fast. So I will transition us to our next panel. That will be moderated by Orjigo Horahan. She is our Vice President at Government CIO. I'll let her introduce the panelists, but Jim and Jonathan, thank you so much for shedding light on some of the workforce issues.
Thank you. Great job, Jim. And great job, Amy. Great to be here.
Thank you.
My name is Orjigo Horahan, and I'm thrilled to be moderating the CIO panel on this very pertinent subject of the future of work. First of all, let me introduce Adrian Burton. Adrian is the Chief Information Officer at HRSA and has been since 2014. And it's fair to say that since Adrian's been at HRSA, IT over there has had a bit of a shake-up. Welcome, Adrian.
Thank you very much.
How are you doing?
I'm doing really well. Thanks for inviting me.
No trouble. Thank you for being here. And then Jamie Holcomb is the CIO over at Patent Trademark Office at Department of Commerce, and for over a year has been having this remarkable IT modernization happening at USPTO. Hi, Jamie.
Hello, Orjigo. Thanks a lot for having me.
Thank you for being here. So let's get into it with the future of work. So, I mean, over the last few years, AI, mobile, and the push for more of these sorts of things have been topical and in some circles maybe even debated. And then we find ourselves in this COVID era and hopefully soon post-COVID era. And the direction of work has changed to, you know, as virtual, as mobile, as remote as possible. Adrian, let me ask you, HRSA awards over $10 billion in grants every year across around 100 programs. That's a massive mission and critical to healthcare and health outcomes in the US. So for our non-HHS audience, can you just introduce the overarching mission at HRSA? And then also, how is working at HRSA different today from how it was, say, at the beginning of the year?
Okay, well, HRSA stands for the Health Resources and Services Administration, and we are part of Health and Human Services. And our mission is to provide healthcare to underserved communities. So some of those communities would be geographically isolated, for instance, folks that live in rural areas. We support folks that or populations that are economically and medically vulnerable. So many people know about our programs, but they don't necessarily translate their programs to HRSA. So one of the biggest programs would be our Health Center program, which treats 28 million people a year is the population that we serve with our Health Center program. We also have a huge program called the Ryan White HIV and AIDS program, and we make sure that 500,000 people who have HIV, that they're connected with care. And we have other programs such as our maternal and child health workforce programs, some of our workforce programs, as well as the OPTN. Most folks won't necessarily associate the organ procurement program with HRSA, but we're responsible for that. So in the last 6 months, things have definitely been different. We've been extremely busy over at HRSA. One is because the pandemic is a global health crisis, HRSA is playing a critical role in that. And not only that, you have our workforce that has gone to maximum telework. So that has definitely been an adjustment, somewhat of adjustment, because we have a high level of telework at HRSA anyway, but still trying to execute our mission as well as with the maximum telework. We've definitely have stepped up to the challenge. So it's just been extremely, extremely busy at HRSA over the last couple of months.
So I'm going to come back to you, Jamie, on the same question, but let me stay with you for 1 second, Adrian. So what tools and what approaches have you used maybe to make this transition towards a more maximum remote, I guess?
Well, we've used, I guess, 3 different approaches. One is that we are using our robust technologies. And as Jonathan mentioned in the prior interview where he talked about, you really have to be prepared for contingencies. And I think that HRSA, that we were definitely ready for the challenge of the pandemic. So we have robust technologies in place, a lot of collaboration tools. We have a robust network. We use Skype for most of our communication, which is really great because that really simulates people stopping in to visit, and in terms of like stopping in someone's office or someone's cubicle. Instead of doing that, now you just call them on Skype and just, click on them, and then you can have a virtual meeting. I know that I use Skype heavily, even for all hands meetings with my staff. I have monthly all hands chat now that we're at 100% telework, as well as I meet with folks. I just pop in on a monthly basis. I pop into 10 employees and just, see how things are going throughout the pandemic. So I think that is critical. I think another important thing that you need to have in place would be having the right team. So when you're facing a contingency such as this, you need to make sure that your team is already and ready to go. So you can't wait until there's an emergency to plan for the emergency. So for us, I feel really confident in that ability, that we were already ready. And then in addition, what we did is we made sure that our staff had FAQs as well as videos so that they could use the tools that we had in place. And then we provided on-site support for the staff that needed to come in to potentially, when they had hardware challenges or different things like that. So we had to have like a minimum staff on site to address those needs. In addition, I think what's been really important is communication. I know that during the pandemic, our Chief Operating Officer, Wendy Ponton, has been communicating, as well as our HRSA administrator communicating to staff, and not only within our operating division in HRSA, but also across HHS. Jose Arrieta, the HHS CIO, pulled all of the HHS CIOs together to make sure that everyone was ready for 100% telework. So I think communication is extremely important, and it can be underestimated, but I think that it's really critical in a situation such as this.
Thank you. So Jamie, same question for you, a little bit on PTO's mission, and how is it different, working at PTO today from what it was maybe even when you started?
Sure. Thanks a lot for the question. All I can say is to validate and verify everything Adrian just said. I mean, like, I'm going to say ditto, it's like, okay. But at the same time, one of the first things we did, as you can see, this is a challenge coin. It has the patent and trademark office on the front. Mm-hmm. And what I tried to influence is everybody getting into what mission first is.
Okay.
And it's really easy. The mission first is you award patents and you register trademarks. Anything other than that is not in our purview. Mm-hmm. So you could be the best trash taker outer in the world. How that helps in awarding a patent or registering a trademark is key. Now, it's really interesting. You asked before and after or during the COVID-19 crisis. Before the crisis, we were actually averaging about 8,000 teleworkers of our 13,000 teleworkers. So when the crisis hit, we were asked to go to maximum telework. And what we did was we pretty much doubled our infrastructure. So along with contractors, we have over 14,000 simultaneous VPN connections every day. We're using many different technologies, including WebEx, including Skype, including Microsoft Teams. We have over 1,200 daily WebEx meetings with anywhere between 14 and 42 people per call. It's an amazing thing. Mm-hmm, not only are we doing that, but we're actually doing better. And why do I say that? Because no one's taking vacation. There's nowhere to go. And so our productivity numbers year over year are actually better now because we should have experienced vacations by this time. Everybody is just doing their work and our numbers are through the roof. And how are we helping? Well, please go to uspto.gov because we have the ability to show all of our COVID-19 contributions. If you have a good idea for how to combat it, you could patent that and you could trademark that. So that's what it's all about, and that's what we're about.
Excellent. So it's fair to say an adjustment, a successful one for both of you, but an adjustment nonetheless. Jamie, I'm going to ask you. So technology is one thing. People, completely different thing. I know Adrian was talking a little bit earlier about communications. Have you launched any communications initiatives, any outreach, training and education to get, the other, 1/3 of PTO workforce who weren't remote? Have you launched anything to help them with this adjustment?
Yes. We have done everything that we were doing before and more. So our communications outreach was to those folks who had not done telework as a normal course of business. And so we have the formal education where you can take computer-based training online. But if you can't telework, how do you get online? So we actually have our folks go through, we have a very good help desk and service desk. So, it's not trying to hang up the call and just complete the error or get it resolved. It's actually making sure that the customer on the other end is serviced and satisfied with their call and have their problem resolved. And so that's one of the things we've done as communicated across the board. Don't let something sit. If you have some problem, make sure everybody knows about it. Mm-hmm. And as soon as we know about it, what we've done is we've put great pages up saying, hey, we're having this problem. If you're experiencing this, go here and there. And what that does is it enables people to share information a lot more. And so we're trying to do that throughout the agency. We've just got approval, and there's a lot of work going to have our ability to telework anywhere in the United States. So we're trying to attract now and recruit people. And we were talking about how it's changed. Oh my gosh, the communication is you do not need to be in Alexandria, Virginia to work at the USPTO. You can live anywhere. You can do almost anything as long as you can get that high-speed connection onto the backbone of the internet. We will securely make sure you can do your job from anywhere. And that's a real difference of opinion in before and after.
Yeah, and I think that takeaway is the same for industry. There was maybe a little bit more focus on being based here in order to work, in this industry. But I think this has really taught us that difference. All right. So
I have one thing to add on that. I just want to add on to that. So at HRSA, what we did is right before we went to 100% telework, we created a checklist for employees to put in their laptop bags so that they had the number for the help desk, readily available in case they experience problems logging in and so forth. So we did that, as well as we recently sent out an IT survey to get feedback from staff to see how things work. But anyway, so we did that, as well as the short videos. So we have like 2 to 3 minute videos on how do you use certain features to make it really easy, similar to what you see with YouTube. You go to YouTube, you look it up, and the same thing that we have for Skype and Connect and different things, that tools that people have used, but they may not have used, but they may not understand all of the different capabilities. So what we did is we deployed additional videos. We had some videos in our library, but we deployed additional videos to help with that and to reduce the number of help desk calls that came in. And then another thing that's been important is really protecting your staff that is in the office. So when folks come in, with laptop issues and different things like that, it, is to make sure that they are protected as well. So that's just been another aspect that you don't think about until you're in a situation like that. But protecting the people that are in the building is really important when they need to interact with someone who's just coming in they're having a hardware problem. But people don't think that in terms of providing help desk support, that it really is a close interaction. And so we had to develop procedures to work around that.
Absolutely. Thank you for that, Adrian. And then we can't have you here, Adrian, and not talk about CARES Act. So speaking of communications, industry is keen to hear a little bit about CARES Act. I know HRSA has had a huge role to play. And in some ways, this is part of the new normal for you, because this is not going away anytime soon. So that workload increase, but we'll come back to that. What technology elements would you say? I mean, I know grants processing, of course, and data management and reporting, but what has been the lift? What effort has it taken? And what is there left to do on this?
Well, we received a tremendous amount of funding for the CARES Act, because typically our budget is $10 billion a year. Well, we had 10 billion, plus we had billions more coming in for our grantee population. And we also received $175 billion with the Provider Relief Fund. And so the goal for us as an organization, because typically we're a grant making organization, so the priority is get the money out the door as fast as possible to help the healthcare providers. And so that's what we've been focused on. I mean, day and night, just all across the organizations, from our health centers to our rural health programs. We set up hhs.telehealth.gov website, no, telehealth.hhs.gov website to help individuals who are looking for telehealth services. Also for providers can also use it as a resource. So it's been extremely busy. We have a system that we made some changes to it and developed some different new capabilities to push the money out even faster. Typically, it would take us anywhere from 90 to 120 days is like the normal grant lifecycle process at HRSA, but we were pushing out money in like 18 days. And that was, like a heavy lift. People were working throughout the weekend to push those grants out. And then we went to 12 days because each time we got better and better. And then we were able to push them out in 5 days. So we implemented some automation. So it was not only used by one particular bureau within HRSA because we have 90 programs, but those features were implemented into our core system so that they could help turn it around. And what we ended up doing was we had group meetings with all the bureau and offices so that we could talk about the grants that needed to go out and how are we going to do that as a team. And so there was a lot of collaboration between our IT folks, our programs folks, our grants management folks to work as a team to push that money out, really fast. So that's what we're working on. And then we automated, we made some changes to our batch funding memo process, where it would take a couple 100 hours, and we were able to reduce it to like 8 to 16 hours. So that was just a relief to staff because now as we automate it more and more, we have a lot that's automated. However, you can have it automated, but it can still not be as streamlined as you need it to be in the case of a contingency. And so anyway, we worked closely. It was a great partnership between us and program to get those grants out the door. And then you had the Provider Relief Fund with $175 billion on top of that. And so we worked with the United Health Group is the main contractor that's working with us on that. And so we went more of a turnkey solution where they were able to provide a lot of the capabilities, and we interfaced with that with other capabilities back at HRSA when we needed to. We used DocuSign, we used Tableau for business intelligence capabilities. So it's really just trying to bring all those things together. So, it's a interesting every day. I never have a dull day around here. Definitely keeping things exciting, and most importantly is pushing the money out to healthcare providers that desperately need that money for funding to fight COVID. So it's just I'm really proud to be part of that, to be able to help in that way. So we're just really excited to be able to serve.
Absolutely. So let's pivot a little bit to you, Jamie. At the beginning of this, we talked about how the future or even current state of work is more remote, more mobile, more virtual. And many of us, I know I'll speak for myself, I'm a mum of 2 young children, and nothing about this has been light work. It has not been easy at all. And we are asking our workforce to carry on, and the mission is still there, and maybe even, I know in the case of HRSA and PTO, maybe even more critical and more urgent than it was before. And care options and schooling, they're just not the same as they used to be. So what tools, what approaches, what technologies, any communications that you can, or that you have been supporting your workforce with to make that balance with the competing priorities just a little smoother? Anything that PTO is doing, if possible?
Yeah, we have very flexible work programs where we're able to ensure that the folks are given tasks, and then based on what they need to do, they figure out the schedule upon which they can conduct that. That's just the flexible work schedule. That actually happened before COVID-19. But now with the advent, what we're seeing is a lot more of collaboration tools. The tools that I mentioned before, of course, are bread and butter to teleconference, the video and audio that we're using, WebEx, Microsoft Teams, etc. We're looking at newer technologies as well, collaboration whiteboards, and being in the same place or seemingly to be in the same place when you're actually coast to coast. Mm-hmm. We ought to think about how we might not have to go back to these very expensive buildings and headquarters in the urban centers. Mm-hmm. Maybe we can actually have places where we get together once or twice a week, wherever it might be in the region. And then those regional offices get together with other regional offices. So you still have the face-to-face interaction that's required, but then you dissipate, you go back to whatever situation you have on your own, and you get the work done based on your own schedule. Mm-hmm. I don't think that employers, including the federal government, need to be adult daycare. All right? We hire people to do a certain job. They need to get that job done. And we also need to agree on the milestones, the deadlines, and the specific tasks. My job as a leader and a manager is to free you from the obstacles that get in your way of getting it done, including time and other types of resources. So what we need to do is get away from, and again, sometimes I speak for myself, sometimes I speak for the agency. And I'd like to speak for myself at this point.
Okay.
We have a very odd way of doing work nowadays, even though we've moved to an information society, we still seem to be stuck in the manufacturing age of old. And why things are done on a 40-hour work week is beyond me. It makes no sense. If I have a great idea for an algorithm or a new way to approach an idea, and I think of it on a Saturday afternoon, being bored watching my kids' baseball or something, I should be able to say, whoa, we're paying for people's thoughts and knowledge, not for their time. And that's a very hard concept to get people through. We are passing laws now, which are going against people having these regular, just side jobs. What's your side hustle? And it's amazing that things like Uber and Uber Eats and other things are changing the way we actually think about the entire workforce. So I do think there's new paradigm shifts coming, and they're going to require us to think out of the box so that we don't keep pinning people down with old laws and old regulations. They don't apply anymore. Free yourself of that and try to think and be part of the new transformation.
Mm-hmm. So Adrian, I'm going to ask you a very similar question. Increased workload, of course, at HRSA. We're talking about not just working at home, but helping your workforce be able to balance the competing priorities that we are all, I'll use the word enduring right now. Any tools you are thinking about, looking to, considering in the future, or implementing to help with that? I know for me, mobile, being able to do my work in whatever room, at whatever point, at least to some extent, has been helpful. Any thoughts from you?
So we've been mobile for years now. So that's not new to HRSA. Even within our building, it's mobile. Folks carry around their laptops. We put a lot of time and effort over the years to make sure that, folks had lightweight laptops and so that they could be mobile. We implemented a voice over IP telephone system so that wherever you are, you can have your phone. So all that stuff has come in handy right now during COVID because it's been pretty seamless. And we have folks out in 10 regions as well. And some folks out in the, not in headquarters, some of them telework 100%, some maybe teleworking 50%. So we have a mobile workforce. And I know that with some of the, during COVID-19, that OPM offered different, accommodations and different things like that. So our HR office has been really great in getting information out so that folks know what type of resources exist to assist with competing things such as childcare or caring for elderly parents. So that's just been just a part of how we do business. And then our employee viewpoint survey is extremely high at HRSA as an organization. We're probably about 2,400 individuals that are responsible for all the work that we do, but it really is a close-knit organization. And so we try to make sure that folks have, flexibilities there and accommodations there. So that's just a part of our organization. I guess it'll be interesting with the EVS and different, now that we're not in the building and we're remote, is doing other things to compensate for that. Such as, like I said, monthly chats with employees to see how are things going. And then you hear that, well, my son is 12 and, like some of the challenges that folks are experiencing and to be able to understand it and to work with them, because it truly is a partnership and teamwork with you and your staff. And the more that you can accommodate, the better we are as an organization and the stronger we are.
Yeah. So I'm hearing from both of you that part of your success with this, preparing for the current state and the future, has to do or has had to do with being ready so you didn't have to get ready. Right.
Right. Yeah. You could just refine it, right? Because you got to be ready and then you refine your readiness. But the point is that there's no quick way to go buy tools. I heard Jonathan talk about, trying to buy laptops and different things. Like, you have to have all that infrastructure in place, and you're just augmenting what you already have at that point.
Okay. So let me ask this final question. I don't know if we're going to have time to check the questions, but let me ask this question of you, Adrian, really quickly. At HRSA, so what is the future of work? What is the future state?
From an IT perspective, we're looking more at platform as a service as opposed to developing custom applications. I know that with the Provider Relief Fund and some of the other things that have come up, just providing more flexibility in our IT portfolio is key. We have been working a lot on data anyway. So we're looking more at some of the artificial intelligence. We implemented Tableau years ago and just moving more to predictive analytics. And we implemented chatbots for our grantee contact center. So I think, for us, it's about platform as a service. We're implementing Teams in the next 12 months. So just really kind of building on what we have and expanding the capability and the agility for the organization.
And Jamie, same question. Future of work at the CEO.
I think the future work is going to be way different than it is right now. It used to be that you got a company car if you were a salesman. Well, they don't do that anymore. And I think the same thing is going to be true about our individual devices that we choose to use to interface with the internet. Because whatever device it is, as long as you have a connection in, that's the way you should interface with your work. And so IT needs to create that service-oriented infrastructure to allow for any and all devices, but you can't do everything. So you have to have a standard setting where we all agree on what should be. The IoT, the Internet of Things, and the device standards coming are going to be very key. Once you can address everything, then it'll be a focus and prioritize of how to get that done. I think we're just at the third phase of the internet. The first phase was getting her done with infrastructure. The next phase was the killer app. And the final phase is going to be the whole IoT and being able to address everything. So work will never be the same. And I think COVID-19 became the catalyst to make IoT happen even quicker with 5G.
Wow,
and don't forget about security.
Don't forget about security always. We need to deal with that, and it's on a separate panel. So Adrian, Jamie, thank you so much for giving us your time today. I think we're going to send this back to Mike. Thanks a lot.
All right. Thank you so much to all three of you for closing it out there with the panel. I'd like to thank all of our speakers for joining us today and sharing their experiences on the future of work. Fantastic to hear your points of view on the topic. We're going to continue to follow this important issue as the time goes on and this issue continues to evolve. So make sure you follow our coverage for updates on these conversations on our website at governmentciomedia.com. And we'll be sure to continue to update you with our newsletter, but it also will have guests on podcasts and video interviews as well. Finally, I'd like to again thank our sponsor, ServiceNow, for their partnership on this event. We're grateful for their continued support. And I'd also like to encourage everyone to check out our series of upcoming virtual events for the rest of the year. We have those posted on our website under events. We got some great topics to include artificial intelligence, cybersecurity, infrastructure, a lot of the issues that are really shaping government IT. Speaking of which, our next virtual event is going to be on August 13th, and it's going to be focused on artificial intelligence. So make sure you sign up for that and don't miss that. So with that, thank you very much to everyone again for joining us. We'll also have a newsletter come out with a recording for this if you missed any parts of it, as well as some articles from our great editorial team. So thank you very much, and look forward to seeing everyone again soon.